I can't believe all of this. You're sitting right underneath the Zeus.
A weapon? I thought they didn't have any.
The specter of war? You've got to be kidding me.
A giant?
Halberd Dragon!
Because that's his full, title. Hello then, my fellow hunters, and wow! Now that I have been able to sit down and properly absorb the ridiculousness that is Title Update 4, everything coming with it, and the fact that it is quite literally a game-changing capstone of a title update. It might be the last one, it might be a shame to not get a proper 5, but by Gog are they going out with a bang. Between Gogma-Artian weapons, the transcendent armor system, the actual Gogmazios hunt itself from the looks, the fact that we're getting an instant festival and then almost an immediate arch-tempered, it just feels like there's a lot to suddenly do. And that's not even mentioning the little stuff like the new quest types, the advanced quests, and just generally the fluff around it that still looks like an absolute lot of fun. Now that we actually kind of know how some of this stuff works, I really like it. I also want to say that I'm not sure when this is going to go up, and at the time of me saying these words, the Game Awards hasn't happened, so if anything does happen there and you're finding it weird that I'm not referencing it here, then this is why. Also, this is why. In any case, yeah, I wanted to actually properly talk about it now I have digested it. I want to start, honestly, with Gogma-Artian, because it is one thing that I've sort of seen a little bit of a mixed reaction to, and I'm not really entirely sure why. Like, on one hand, I completely get that a lot of people were expecting just to have, and me included, a regular entry new on the weapon tree that you make with Gogmazios materials, and it's a Gogmazios weapon. And then the Gogma-Artian was additional on top for the Artian system. But the more you think about it, the more that doesn't make any sense. Because the Gogma-Artian was always going to be the new endgame way. The power on those things is ridiculous. So if there was a separate, unrelated, just regular kind of Gogmazios weapon tree, it would be just immediately power crept and made redundant. And also, where would the model for Gogmazios weapons go? If the fact that the Gogma-Artian weapons weren't using Gogmazios model weapons as their model, then it would be a little bit disappointing, but for all intents and purposes, Gogma-Artian just is Gogmazios weapons. It might be built from Artian, but it is Gogmazios' line of weapons. It's made from Gogmazios, it looks like Gogmazios, it's just a cool way to make it an entire endgame system. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, especially now we know that the RNG isn't going to be that insane. So we can basically, as I understand it, take the Artian that we have, make it into a Gogma-Artian by giving it a preference towards attack, affinity, or element. That'll then give it a random set bonus and group skill bonus. Whether the set bonus, etc. you can get is tied to the affinity, attack, or element favor you choose, that's going to be a big question mark. If we end up in a way where Lord Soul can only come on the affinity one, then that's going to be a problem, because that's going to really clash meta-wise, but that's a build crafting problem. It's not an actual gameplay problem. In any case, that happens, and then you can either re-roll and improve the reinforcements, or you can just improve the reinforcements if you're happy with them. And then you can re-roll the set bonuses you actually got on the weapon. So the RNG that's being added is basically just re-rolling the set bonuses over and over until you get the ones that you want. Then it's just the base Artian RNG that still exists, which I think is a fair kind of middle ground. It'll take a little bit to actually get what you're after, but it's not going to be as insane as it would have been if there was, as we feared at worst, 2-3 new layers of complete RNG on top of needing a perfect RNG Artian to begin with. As it stands, stands, you're just going to take the weapon you're literally using now, if it's an Artian, make it Gogma, and then just re-roll the set bonuses until you're happy. And that's, like, not too bad. Eventually you'll get the set bonuses you want, and to do that, you hunt Gogmazios over and over, because it's still his weapons, it's his materials that are making it happen. I think that's just really cool, and I'm excited to get stuck into that system and learn how it properly works. Again, that is current understanding from the information that we have seen. That said, I do totally get that psychologically just making a weapon on a tree is monster huntery, but we have had relic weapons before that were even more monstrously RNG than Artian, believe it or not, and even things like Safi Jiva are cool to Roth weapons. This Gogma system is definitely looking superior to them, and they were completely fine as well. I will 100% join team for Master Rank. I think it's time to put Artian to bed, either a different system or back to just pure crafted. It's had its time in base wilds, and I think that's likely what's going to actually happen. But in terms of this, I think it's just a fun way to make Gogmazios weapons both be the endgame weapons while also being able to carry the endgame system. And I know a lot of you guys do disagree with me here, but with layered weapons in the game, your weapon is literally just a stat stick. It's an attack number, it's a decoration slot holder, it's a status element, etc. applier. What it looks like is what matters, not how you got it. Again, to me. And the fact you can make it look like any given monster weapon you have, then to me makes it fine that it didn't originally come crafted as a monster weapon. The RNG side of things, totally get you. It is insane how ridiculous it is to get a perfect Artian. But thankfully, you don't need to. Nothing in the game requires you to be that min-max meta, and Gogma-Artian, if as we understand it currently is correct, won't need you to either. You'll be able to take any just fine Artian, which you'll have lying around, and make it into a super weapon with Gogma weapon, and that's quite fun. The set bonuses is where it's at, rolling them, getting a good one, and getting an entirely new fun build because of it, and that to me is just the juice. I absolutely adore that, and I think it's going to turn out to be really fun. And let's just take a moment to actually talk Gogmazios himself and the hunt here. Like, more than anything, this has the potential to be up there with Raging Brachydios, with Fatalis, with Primordial Malzeno, with the cream of the crop of modern Monster Hunter. Gogmazios was already a peak fight back in old gen, whereas now, with what we've seen, I don't even want to watch it back again. I don't want to take any more of it in for the pro and noob, but just that raw memory of that initial reveal is electric. The railgun that we're going to use against him is the perfect evolution of his stuck Dragonator mechanic. The fact that we need to break the rule of 4 and have potentially 8 hunters there. It looks like it's going to be this delicious blend of cinematic spectacle, but actually hunting him. He's got his super attack. No doubt he's got a new super attack. It seems like there's phases and you flow through this new area in Azuz. And ultimately, he's got all the makings of just the hunt. Like, I will be blown away if he's not comfortably the most enjoyable experience in Wilds. And that's a good thing, because we are probably going to have to hunt him a lot to fuel the new endgame, but that will take a while, at least for me, to approach any kind of wearing thin, because, hey, look, this is my favorite Elder Dragon, full stop, all time. Not my favorite monster, he's like 3rd, so, you know, pretty high up there, but favorite Elder Dragon. And getting him in this form, I'm just so happy that he gets to be in Master Rank by virtue of being in High Rank. Honestly, I can't wait to see what the Master Rank systems are going to be with just the pure systemage we're now getting in base High Rank. There's so much to tool up your builds with, and it's really electric. But that raw hunt, oh my god! Transcendent armor is transformative as well. Being able to actually upgrade all of this rare 5 and 6 into real relevance again is going to change a lot of things. And it immediately changes what would have been the obvious best picks for some weapons to get as their free set bonus on a Gogma-Artian weapon. So there is just going to be so much delicious theory crafting to be done, and I can't wait to do that for you guys. That's just not even ignoring the actual just pure fun of what looks to be one hell of a spectacle, but still, you know, hunt that is Gogmazios across seemingly multiple stages with multiple phases and some big set piece energy, and oh my god, I just can't wait. And then beyond that, having everything expanded out into just more going on, with the festival, with Archtemperature dahaad, with new quest types to give you some end game challenge, and indeed the usual swaths of new event quests and things to earn. Oh, and let's not to mention the absolutely giganormous patch notes that across the board are giving really needed positive changes to so many aspects of the game. Of course, we have a dedicated video going over it all in depth, but nearly every weapon is feasting. Some less so, you know, charge blade over there, but for the most part, this is an incredibly cool set of changes to see. I hope bow is getting the damage it deserves. It certainly seems like it. But even just the skill changes, actually letting all the trigger skills actually be triggered by attacks that, again, couldn't before, and buffing them, that's an entirely new dimension of skills that might suddenly be relevant again. That is so exciting. So many weapons and then so many weapons builds would be changing even if there wasn't new stuff being added just from the patch notes. That is really, really meaty. If all goes well, if all ends up smoothly, if all ends up functioning as it seems like it does, the state of Wilds with Title Update 4 on top is going to end up being one of the most challenging, one of the most expansive and complete base Monster Hunter games. And of course, it's a rocky road in some respects to get here, but there's no denying that we're looking at the potential for just absolute peak base game, at least now after Title Update 4. And I think that's really commendable. Of course, there are two kind of caveats that we want to talk about. The first is performance, and that has held the game back massively. It's the single biggest reason that it's not continued along the massive success it had to begin with, and is ultimately the reason why I can't in good conscience make the assertion that Wilds is the game of the year. It's my personal one, but I don't believe it is the objectively correct one to choose, and that is because of the performance issues on PC, which is such a shame, because if it had launched with buttery smooth performance and maybe a little bit more meat on the bone, I think it would be a genuine Game of the Year contender. I think the state that it will ideally be in post-Title Update 4 would easily be a Game of the Year contender. And in a world where so many games and problems just get ignored, seeing a game really put the effort in and turn around, respond to feedback like Wilds has done, seeing how much the devs clearly care from everything they say and do, is really, really positive. And it is certainly a shame that it took this long to address it in the meaningful way that they are now addressing it. But the thing is, game deving isn't easy. In fact, it's quite the opposite of easy. There is no magical press this button and fix performance. And I guarantee you, no one is more upset or feeling let down at performance issues than the devs themselves. It takes a lot of testing and working out what's actually going on across multitudes of systems and hardware. A console performance is absolutely perfect. The game has still and maintains incredible review scores on consoles, but of course PC was suffering. And while it being split into 3 parts across, Title Update 4 released January and February is, again, a shame to see, that also goes to show just how much they're putting into it. They could easily have just done the minimum with Title Update 4 release, reason that nothing else is really happening with the game outside of the mini update in February, and leaving it there. But they clearly don't want to do that. They have said in interviews, you can see it on Ryozo and Takeda-san's face, how much this performance performance issue has pained them, and it must be an incredible stress point for the team. The amount of comments like, well, they could just make less cosmetics and have better performance, like it's the same people responsible for both. It's just not a thing like that. Now, don't get me wrong, this still shouldn't have happened. It should be playable, it should be smooth, it shouldn't have taken this long to reach, hopefully, what will be a nice performance level for any given system as long as it meets the minimum requirements. But there is a clear plan and a lot of positive changes coming, and that is good to see. And it's one of the reasons why, when this all is implemented along with the content in Title Update 4, that I think Wilds is going to be in a really, really special state, and will only be remembered more fondly as time goes on. And would you look at that, today we have had some more out of nowhere surprise detail to dig down into the performance changes, and how that's actually going to play out with actual examples, FPS tests, and some proper detail on problem areas and how they've been addressed. This is really good to see. Our commitment to improve stability and performance. We've got the initial roadmap here, and then we can have a deeper dive into the Title Update 4 changes that will be hitting along with Lord Gog. So, processing improvements and load reduction, and then we've got some actual gameplay comparisons, which is really nice to see. Now, there is a lot of detail here if you really care about the nitty-gritty over what's specifically been identified and how they've gone about tackling that, because there's a lot to juggle with performance. You fix one combination of hardware and then you ironically break another. It's a really delicate thing to get right. Of course, you know, it still should be right by this point, but it really cannot be overstated how much of a juggle it can be. So if we have a look then at two big problem areas, the Intel CPU and Nvidia GPU combination, and the AMD CPU and AMD GPU combination, we've got comparisons between Title Update 3 and Title Update 4. And as you can see, the gain in FPS is really quite decent. In the busiest of areas, we're looking at 5 to 10% more FPS, and in less so, up to 30% more, gaining 20 to 25 frames, which is a big deal. It might not sound it purely numerically, but that is a huge jump. That is the difference between it feeling like either unplayable or just not fun to play to an actual pleasant experience. And that's what they wanted with this initial Title Update 4 one, to raise the floor to stop people just literally not being able to engage with the game they otherwise would and do love. So this is really, really promising, and it's very clear the amount of time and effort that's gone into finally making this right, and hopefully it actually is made right. Hopefully we can all enjoy Gogmazios with smooth, buttery frames, and get to experience both getting carded by him and his majesty in crispness. This is really, really good, and I'm glad to have been getting this extra detail. We can then go into the late January one, where we get reducing CPU load and reducing GPU load as extra options, both of which should help immensely. And then further on into February, more changes will happen as needed, more optimization, and I imagine maybe tweaks to the existing two sets of changes, depending on how they actually play out. But one thing is clear, there should be, barring some sort of disaster, a meaningful, noticeable increase to the game's performance in Title Update 4, which is really nice. Obviously, these are Capcom's own videos, we'll do our own testing, but it does seem very much promising, so hold on to your hats. And then, of course, I do want to briefly mention the elephant in the room, the new Cosmetic DLC weapons. Look, fundamentally, yeah, it's a shame that this has happened. It's a shame that the backlash from something like the Lost Codex weapons didn't lead to this not happening again. And I completely understand and empathize with anyone who is annoyed with it, who's disappointed with it, and so on and so forth. These things would be nice, and indeed you can make the argument should be attainable in-game, event quests, earnable, etc., and them being so actually just badass looking and well made can certainly be seen as a little bit of salt in the wound. However, Fundamentally, I think something like this just needs to be looked at through the lens of pure practicality of pragmatism. In a previous generation, and by that I mean generations 1 to 4, people correctly have pointed out that this would just be earnable in-game. And that's true, but in the first 4 generations, we didn't have a title update cycle. We didn't have nearly a year's worth of extra massive content with whole-ass new monsters and endgame systems. That is a big deal. It blew our tiny minds when World started doing it, and now it's just sort of become normalized. But it's still a really big deal. It doesn't need to happen. Monster Hunter traditionally just released its base high-rank game, and that was it in terms of major content additions. But now we do get this cycle. Obviously, it's a win-win for the devs as it keeps interest in the game going over the years. But they also do these title updates because they are as passionate as us about the game and want to give us more. And clearly when it comes to Wilds, want to address concerns as they have done consistently throughout them. And fundamentally, there has to be a gain other than player retention for the title updates. And if that gain is Cosmetic DLC, well, then it's really kind of a necessary evil, if you want to call it that. It's not outrageous to look at the, yes, admittedly, ridiculous amount of various DLC that is in Wilds and World and Risebreak as the price of a title update cycle. And through that lens, that's, like, fine to me, honestly. Yes, we could all say we'd rather have our cake and eat it too, but that's not realistic. That's not the world we live in. That's not the state of the industry. And while that is a shame, it is also something that can't be ignored. And if there are some higher-up suits that are deciding that fancy weapons that you can buy need to be in the game, well, then they get put in the game, and then you can decide what you want to do with that. Completely ignore them, or engage with them, and that's completely fair in either direction. But fundamentally, there isn't just some devs over here with a little cosmetic team going, I'm gonna make some sick weapons and then sell them, fuck everyone. That's just not how these things are. And I see a lot of people, either naively or deliberately in bad faith, kind of putting that across. Bottom line, there is no right or wrong way to react to this. Everyone is different, and I have no problem admitting that I'm just not someone that has a huge problem with cosmetic DLC in games. Obviously, context matters, but the context of Monster Hunter is I've got 700 hours of enjoyment out of Wilds, so describing any amount of money I've spent on this game as bad value would be incredibly disingenuous of me. And ultimately, that's where the line stops. But if the line ever gets crossed, as I've always said, if it starts affecting mechanics, gameplay, or if monsters start being paid walls, though technically you could argue like Master Egg expansions of that, but I digress, then obviously I will rally against it because that is too far. That is a problem. But as it currently stands, I just look at it as some cool visual cosmetic DLC that is the price for a title update support cycle, and then interact with it on a case-by-case basis, and I just don't think it's that worth losing sleep over. Obviously, the slippery slope must always be watched, but as it currently stands, that's where we're at. I just don't think anyone deserves being attacked for either not liking or liking this as a thing. And I think that's something that's important to remember. In any case, fundamentally to me, if all goes well, I think by the end of February, Wilds will have a genuine and significant claim to be the best base Monster Hunter game ever. It may have had a few bumps in the road to get there, but by God is the finish looking strong, and I am just so happy and excited to be able to say that. I will see you guys on the other side of the title update, and I would love to know your thoughts on all of this. Like you've enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the bell for now, consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below, and until we meet again, goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.